am going to get started. There are 20 of us on this call. We'll have a few more people that might pop in as we're speaking. So if you see me look away from the camera, I'm basically admitting students into the call on my second screen. And I believe that all of our admitted students, well, first of all, welcome to all of you. And you're starting the call off muted. When you do have questions and we open it up for Q&A, you are able to ask questions if you want. If you have a preference for video, you can use video if you like, it's up to you. But I do ask while Melissa and I are going through the slides that we remain mostly on mute. And if you have to answer a question, you can use the chat function, or when we start the Q&A, you can unmute for your question, and then we can do the Q&A that way. But I would like to welcome all of you, and thank you. Say congratulations and thank you. This is the culmination of a long process, both for you and then for us at Union, and so we welcome you as our admitted students. For potentially for the fall 2020 incoming class, in the midst of extraordinary and extremely challenging times, but we don't want to lose the opportunity to answer your questions, because I'm sure there are many questions, even as we are all learning to cope with chaos and having to adjust our practices. So we're really glad that we were able to convene a session for you, even as we rescheduled our admitted students day. And really, this is an opportunity for you to ask us all the questions that you would need to assist you in your decision of discernment, because this is one more part of the process. And so our goal at Union is to be transparent about who we are and what we're able to offer, particularly as you're thinking about coming to seminary and graduate school and preparing for that financially, give you a sense of our financial aid process, and then also, help you find the pieces of information that are meaningful for you as you make your decision. So to quickly introduce myself, my name is Vanessa Hutchinson. I'm the Vice President of Admissions and Financial Aid. So I recognize many of the names on this list. And some of you, we've spoken in the past. I've read some of your applications, so I'm really excited to sort of be here virtually with you. And I'm going to turn it over at this point to Melissa Desravines, so she can also introduce herself.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to congratulate you on your acceptance to Union and pursuing your calling. Second, I'm very happy that you are taking proactive steps to learn how to fund your dreams. So thank you all for being on today's webinar. On today's webinar, I will be covering the financial aid process, as well as speaking through best ways to prepare the state of your finances prior to joining us at Union. That will entail walking you through both federal and institutional funding, as well as giving you a more holistic picture on what it means to fund your cost of attendance, as well as the resources that could be available to you as you go through this process. So I'm going to turn this over again to Vanessa, who is going to kick off the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Melissa. And so Melissa and I form the core of the financial aid team at Union. I manage both the admissions office and the financial aid office, and then we coordinate with other offices within the overall academic team at Union, including the registrar's office, the academic office, where a lot of the advisement occurs, and then the student affairs office. So we all work together as a small but mighty team to support students at Union. And so the purpose of this call is to talk answer your questions about financial aid at Union specifically. So how do you actually manage the financial aid process? What do we offer? If you have questions about how awards work, but then also to provide context for approaching graduate school, because I think that, you not only is it important for you to think about what resources you have institutionally, and also you may have access to through federal other programs, but to also really think about, how do you prepare even as individuals for this decision, even starting now. What steps can you take now so that when you are situated in seminary or divinity school, that you feel in control of your financial destiny, because I think having an understanding of your financial decisions and how you've prepared financially for seminary will make your overall student experience better. So that's the spirit in which we're offering this. So we'll start with a little bit of just things to think about, and we can also talk about some of these one-on-one for our individual appointments. Because we do like to stay in conversation with our students at all times in the process. So I'm going to get started with the slides and move forward with them pretty quickly, because we want to save some time for Q&A. So I'd like to have at least 15 to 20 minutes for just your questions. So we'll move pretty quickly to the slides. So, as I said, we'll talk a little bit about, ways to financially prepare for graduate school. We'll review the cost of attendance at Union. So what does it cost to, in terms of what your budget should be for Union, how institutional scholarships and grants work at Union, what does the federal student loan process look like, and how it might be different from what you've experienced as an undergraduate student. We'll share some resources on external scholarship and grant programs, and then talk about loan forgiveness. 5 ways to financially prepare. I think some of these you're already doing, but we wanted to just make sure that we share some of this with you. One, you do want to shop for your school with care. So, and this is part of our process. We recognize that, Union may be one of the schools that you're applying to. It may be the only school that you're applying to, but it's always important to give thought to that decision. And that's why we offer this seminar as a resource for you and an assistant to help you with your thinking. We encourage you not to leave money on the table. So that's from all sources. When we actually, within the seminary space, ATS, which is our accrediting organization, and seminaries that we work with, such as Auburn, done a lot of research on this, and we've identified, sort of 4 sources of funding that students should be looking to fund your experience in seminary. So number 1 is institutional funding, and many seminary and divinity schools are relatively generous, some more than other, depending on the institutional capacity, to provide some level of funding. And at Union, 90% of students receive some level of financial support. So you should always feel free to raise your concerns with us, but then recognize that, like any other institution, we have limitations, and we're always transparent about those limitations. But then you should also be looking for additional sources of funding as you're making your decision. And so, that may include, external scholarship and grant programs that could be through your church, your diocese. A lot of mainstream denominations may have funding programs that allow you to apply towards a seminary degree. For those that are interested in social justice, or there may be, a tie within the nonprofit sector, there are many foundations that also would allow you to use your apply for funding and then use those funds towards a degree at Union. And so we definitely encourage you to actively look for those sources, even before you make a decision, because a lot of external programs allow you to bring it with you to multiple institutions. You also Many people will look to some sort of student loan funding, whether they're federal programs or private loan programs, because they are established ways of accessing funds for students. And so that they're basically special borrowing programs that are allow you to do things like put off making either payments, whether it's interest. Well, there aren't that many sort of subsidized programs that don't allow interest to accrue, but they may allow you to hold off payments if that's not something that's possible for you while you're in school. They work alongside student enrollment, so they accommodate people who are students as opposed to people who are working traditionally and then receiving, say, traditional salary or something like that. And then, a lot of students will rely on some level of personal savings. So that's not possible for everyone, and we have programs that provide accommodation for that. But it's within sort of the four sources of funding that you would want to consider, whether or not you do have money set aside that would allow you to borrow less or to give you a little bit of a cushion, for example. The third thing you'll want to do is, as much as possible, deal with your existing debt. So, that can be everything from making important decisions around your existing student loans if you have them. I know when I went back for my master's degree, I went back to my loan servicers to make sure that if I hadn't paid off my loans, could I pay, if the balance was small enough for me to just pay it off before going back to school, or to make sure that it was in deferment. So you'll just want to check in with any existing debt, and then also with credit card debt, that could mean paying it down. Or if you don't have a lot of credit card debt, or if you don't have any credit card debt, sometimes it may mean applying for a credit card just so that you have access to credit when you're a graduate student. So it's going to be an individual decision for each person, but you'll want to make sure that you know where you stand with your debt load. This is a great time to start thinking about a new budget. So, start to, one of the most important things of becoming a student is learning how to live like a student, which can be difficult if you have a family, if you've had a career, if you're coming back to school after a significant time away. Learning how to curtail your expenses. For some, when I moved back to New York City, one of the important decisions was whether or not it made sense for me to maintain a car, because there's car insurance, there's the cost of regular upkeep and maintenance, car payments, and whether that's worth having in a city with abundant public transportation. You don't need a car. So those are some of the decision-making factors that you might want to consider. And as I said already, apply for credit cards while you still have the time to do so, if that's something that you would want to have access to while you're in school. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. So again, shop wisely. Cheaper doesn't always mean better. And so I always, whenever you're going to grad school, it's an investment in many ways. There's money. There's also your time away from other things that you could be doing. There's also your spiritual and personal energy. This is part of your process of discernment. And so cost is one factor, and it's a very important one, but you should also think about the location. Is the city or the environment that you're in going to help you do what you want to do vocationally, personally? Is it the right mix of people and faculty to help you spiritually and academically? And those are important things. The community, access to faculty. At Union, we're very fortunate to have a faculty that's very present in the lives of our students. For our residential students, that's living in community with our faculty. So there's a lot of opportunity to communicate both inside of the classroom, but even outside of the classroom as well. So they're very present. The environment that you're in, funding, those are also important things. You should be clear about what your goals are, and then communicate that to myself, to Melissa, so that we can talk to you about what Union can and can't do. Because again, we always want to be in conversation with you. And I think, you know, part of going to grad school is there's something that you do. There's always a need to compromise. Um, but I think that if you understand what's most important to you, we can always have a conversation to see how we can assist you. So financial options, we talked a lot about this. You should check to see if you have access to a tuition reimbursement program. We didn't talk about that. Some organizations still do reimburse for tuition. And so, you know, I always, my ethos when it comes to funding is to ask the question, never be afraid to ask. Because the worst that you can hear is that the answer is no, there's not a program available, but there's no risk in asking, including asking union sort of about how we can help you. Because we're always going to be transparent about that, but whether, you know, you can always check in with your HR department to see if they would support your study, or with your denomination to see if your study will, you know, will qualify for tuition reimbursement. Because even if it's a small program, we do have students at Union who are reimbursed through a variety of programs. It could be from a foundation. We have many students that are being reimbursed, are receiving tuition or scholarship support through their diocese or through their denomination. And so taking the time to apply for those programs and research those opportunities is important. And it doesn't just stop in your first year. You can also continue that. If you're not successful right away, a lot of people will actually bring in new scholarship awards during their second or their third year if they're an MDiv student. Again, deal with any existing student debt. And I think also research prior defaults. So I may, Melissa, maybe you might speak to this a little bit when I turn over the slides to you, or you can write to us to find out how to do this. But all students who have borrowed, domestic students that have borrowed federal student loans, you do have the ability to go back and look at your borrowing history. And if you do have a prior default, you can reach out to us, because sometimes we're able to work with students to address those issues before they come to Union. But again, it's part of just working through anything that might be a concern, so that you start off with as clean of a slate as possible, and that we can help you, you know, sometimes work through some of these issues and talk to you about what the impact will be for your eligibility for borrowing. I believe we're on page 7 of the slide. So Melissa, if you wanted to take over from here.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. So what I'm going to cover as it pertains to financial literacy and budgeting resources. Some of this information had been compiled from the Council of Graduate Schools to address the financial literacy concerns of both master's and doctoral students, and also helping you understand that making grad school affordable isn't just about learning about student loans. It's also about making sound financial decisions and providing yourself or arming yourself with information to navigate through this process to make the best decision for you. Next slide, please. Okay. So as you heard Vanessa speak to previously, as you're thinking about affording graduate school, one of the important steps that you should think about taking is just getting your consumer debt in order. And the reason being, it's because one of the tools or one of the resources that could potentially be available to you will look at your credit history and will look at your payment history to make the determination as to whether or not you are eligible to receive that resource, which is a Grad Plus loan. So from now, what you want to do is just get ahead of your balances and pay down any balances if you can, because now that's opening up your credit line, as well as establishing a positive history of repayment. You want to start to get your spending in order So yes, even though you are not living and breathing in the life of a grad student, you are preparing to do so. So living now, or I guess minimizing your budget from now and getting in the habit of living on a moderate budget will be helpful for you as you journey through your degree program. And last but not least, if necessary, apply for any cards now while you still have income, a flow of income coming in through your job, because you never know when you're going to need emergency funding. And at least this provides you with a level of financial security in the event you need to gain access to immediate funds that are not covered by financial aid. Next slide, please. So here I would like to talk about the total cost of attendance. And as you all will receive your financial aid letters very shortly, and you will hear this terminology throughout your time at Union, your total cost of attendance pretty much wraps up your budget as it pertains to what it will cost for you to attend Union, and that does not only include your tuition, but it also includes your housing, your room and board, as well as any living expenses that's associated with being a student here at Union. So your cost of attendance is a budget that covers an academic year, and I have to stress academic year. It is only looking at what your finances will need to be over the course of 9 months. We are not in the business of providing you funding for the full year. We are only looking to provide you with funding that would apply towards your academic year of 9 months. You can, and it can be available to you to apply for summer housing. However, summer housing as well as summer funding does come with its own set of eligibility, but I raise it here so that you know that it is an option since your cost of attendance only covers 9 months. And last but not least, the scholarships do not cover summer funding. So for those of you who will be accepted through Merit Scholarship, again, all of the funding that I am going to speak to today will only cover an academic year. So when we, something disappeared. Hold on one second. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I must have hit something. So when we talk about the cost of attendance, I think it's always helpful to break down for the students what are your direct expenses as well as your indirect expenses, so that you know what are your must-have expenses that will reflect on your bill, and then where you have some discretionary spending, which would be under your indirect. So when you look at your tuition, the tuition at Union is $23,670, and that will be the case as well for the 2020-2021 academic year. Housing, and this housing number is specific to those who choose to live on campus, will be $12,970. The next three items, the medical insurance, which was recently increased to the $5,000 to incorporate any increases that came through from our affiliate school, Columbia, as well as the health program fee and the student activity fees, are all mandatory expenses. So at a total glance, your total direct expenses will sum to $43,040. Where you will have some flexibility will be in your food and meals, which we have budgeted at $4,050, books at $1,600, personal expenses again at $2,000, and local transportation at $1,200. Even though you will be living on campus or in the surrounding area, we always want to account for the fact that you live in New York City, and you will obviously want to be able to get around. So those indirect expenses will tally to about or approximately $8,850. So at a total level, your cost of attendance to be a union student will be $51,890. And when you do receive your financial aid letter, the financial aid will make you whole, regardless of how much institutional funding you will receive. You will be made whole with federal loans, and then it will be up to you to make the determination as to whether you want to accept the federal loan to fill that gap, or if you're going to elect to use your own resources to fill that gap. Next slide, please.
Well, before you move on, I just wanted to also just clarify how to understand what the cost of attendance is, because you'll see this not only from Union, but from other schools. The cost of attendance basically is what is would be the same as a budget. What is the budget required for you to be a student? So for example, we put in a budget amount of $12,970 for housing, but then the actual housing rate is going to depend on the room. So a lot of our dorm rooms, for example, the actual cost for the academic year is a little over $9,000. The same thing with medical insurance. If you sign up for medical insurance through Columbia University, which is where Union students get their medical insurance, the actual amount that would be billed is likely to be less, but we put in a $5,000 budget amount to accommodate for different plans, including some students who are using private plans and they don't elect the Columbia health insurance. A lot of our students use, if they are eligible, might use New York City or Obamacare, which might be significantly less expensive. So, the health program fee, the student activity fee, tuition, and then if you live on campus, the actual housing rate are going to be direct expenses. But just note that, for example, most students don't receive a bill of $5,000 for medical insurance unless they are also getting, for example, their spouse is being covered or they have dependents. And so there is some variability with those expenses, and it's going to depend on your personal situation. And that would be true for any school, that there is going to be some variability in some of these amounts, but this is meant to be a guideline also for what kind of resources you should plan for and how to start thinking about a budget for school.
Okay. So looking at the financial aid process at Union, it is a multi-step process, and it's always best for you to fully understand all of the ordered steps that are needed so that when you were here, we want to ensure that the timing of the disbursement of your loans or your aid is not interrupted by missing any of these steps. So the first step is what I spoke to previously. Actually, let me circle back. The first step is something that is taken by you, and for the most part, the majority of the students on this call have already completed it. So you would need to complete and submit the FAFSA for the 2020-2021 academic year or award year. And one of the things that one of the questions that I've answered from many students is that when you were completing the FAFSA, you were in a different state of finances, and you are anticipating that you will be in another state when you start full time as a student. That is completely understandable. Unfortunately, the information that is requested or required on the FAFSA pertains to your tax documents. So please just complete the FAFSA and submit it, and then we can work through or talk through any changes that are anticipated. Additionally, there are other students who have either made corrections or need to make adjustments to FAFSA. You can do that within the same academic year and resubmit it. There isn't a specific number of times that you can submit the FAFSA. As long as you need to make a correction, you can make the correction and resubmit it, and we will get the amended document on our end. Once the FAFSA has been completed, that will help to inform what type of aid that you are going to receive, as well as in partnership with admissions, what you are eligible to receive. All of that information will be put on a financial aid award letter, which would outline your cost of attendance, which we just reviewed, which is your budget, as well as what resources, which include your institutional funding as well as federal funding, will be provided to you or made eligible to you to help you fund your education. Once you receive that financial aid letter, the recommendation is to read it in its entirety. It will also be accompanied by a financial aid fax letter, and that will outline all of the information that you are seeing, as well as help you understand what the process is to secure financial aid and some of the steps that are needed in order to do that. Once you review it and it's acceptable to you, you will have to sign that document and return it back to my office. That is key because it's the returning of the signed document that formally kicks off the financial aid process. We cannot do anything on our end without your approval, and legally we cannot initiate any sort of loan borrowing without your consent, and that consent comes through the signature within the financial aid letter. While you have returned the letter, independently, you will have to go into the studentloans.gov website, which all of this information is laid out for you within the financial aid fax document that I just spoke to, and you will have to complete a loan entrance counseling as well as sign a master promissory note. So the loan entrance counseling is just the federal government's way of making sure that you are aware of the fact that you are borrowing funds, and they want to ensure that you are making this decision fully understanding what's the criteria to borrow, what will be looked at in order to grant you access to the funds, as well as helping you understand what's your responsibility to repay those funds once it is borrowed. That information is also provided to you within the master promissory note, essentially helping you communicate to the federal government that you understand that you've borrowed these funds and it is your responsibility to repay. None of the federal loans can be dispersed without your completion of both the entrance counseling as well as signing the master promissory note. And then on the flip end, at the tail end of your academic career, you will then also complete another process that closes the loop, which involves the exit counseling. So moving on to step 4, once your aid has been approved and once you have gone through the steps of completing the entrance counseling and the master promissory note, then you will receive a bill from the bursar's office pretty much outlining what your anticipated expenses are going to be. Depending on the state of the bill, the first bill may not fully reflect all of your financial aid, particularly if it's anticipated. In most cases, it will reflect your institutional funding. Your aid as it pertains to federal loans will only be reflected on your bill after it has been dispersed into the system. So I just want to make you aware of that in the beginning so that if you were to receive a bill with just your institutional funding, it is not in error. Step 5, you want to pay direct charges to Bursar or you can receive a refund after the add drop period. So what this means is now all of your aid has been applied to your student account. And if your loans are not, if you've elected not to take out the student loans and you have a gap, then you will make the determination to pay the gap through your personal resources. And one of the ways in which you can pay the gap would be partnering with the bursar's office to make payments, to make scheduled payments. or put yourself on a payment plan, or you can just pay out of pocket the amount that's due. In that case, once that amount has been settled, then your account is whole. If you elect to take out student loans, and in most cases, the addition of the student loans will create an excess of funds that are funding your student account, you will then be left with a difference, or I'd say a credit that will be on your account, which the Bursar's office will then return to you in the form of a refund. And then last but not least, repeating this process from step 1 through step 5 for each of the academic years in which you are enrolled in the degree program. Next slide, please. Okay. So here at Union, we have institutional funding that essentially will cover funds that you do not have to repay. So clearly, this is one of the points of this process that we're most excited about, because as much as we can help the student to secure their dream without having to graduate with extensive debt, then the more that we will be excited about helping you to get to this point. So I'll start with the merit-based scholarships first. So we have a number of merit-based scholarships. The main ones are our Presidential Scholarship, our Huff Scholarship, Heritage Scholarship, as well as Union Tuition Awards. This year, we have opened up some additional merit-based scholarships as well to help offset the cost of attendance. So based on the strength of your overall application, you would have already received notification that you were a recipient of a merit award. Unfortunately, there are only a limited number of awards that's available, and in order to qualify, you needed to have applied by the January deadline. The next form of institutional funding, so in addition to the merit-based scholarships, we also have union grants. And union grants are also scholarships, but these are need-based driven scholarships. And eligibility is based on both your need and merit, but it does require that you complete the FAFSA in order to be eligible. It's available to essentially all students, and it cannot be combined with a large merit award. So if you are, let's say, the recipient of a merit-based scholarship, so a union tuition award, then you would not be eligible for a union grant. It's either a merit-based or a union grant. And then scholarships renew automatically as long as you do the following. So you do have to maintain continuous full-time enrollment. And as of fall 2020, our full-time status would be 9 credits or more. You also have to maintain satisfactory academic progress and remain in good academic standing. And this is something that is reviewed by multiple offices, including the financial aid office, as well as the academic office. And pretty much what this means is that you are in the stage of progressing through your degree program, and we want to ensure that you are on track to graduate within your intended time period, as well as making sure that you are getting through your coursework in a manner that is going to allow you to graduate on time. And last but not least, your scholarships renew automatically, and it applies to the program in which you were admitted. So generally, these awards are awarded at the time of admission, and the amount does not change. while you are enrolled in the degree program. Next slide, please.
Before we go on, I just want to make just some clarification. So I think all of you have already been admitted, so you would have received your funding award letter that would have indicated if you received a merit-based award, which means that it's an award given regardless of need. And then your union grant, and just to give just a sense of kind of what that might look like. Typically our merit awards might be tuition and maybe a little bit more. Some include a small stipend, although we have very few of those. Union grants are on average about 75% of tuition, so they're quite generous, particularly when compared to other types of graduate schools where they may award at most, 35 or 45% of tuition. And then they go up, they can be higher than that 75% dependent on need. So, some of you have written to me if you have concerns about funding. And as I said at the start of the call, you can always reach out to us if you have questions, or if there's something that might not have shown up in the FAFSA that you would want us to consider. And to the extent that we can, and we have budget available, we do try to take that into account as we're considering need. So we don't, once you're actually enrolled, we will keep students at the same scholarship amount while you're at Union, and then try to automatically renew each year so long as you do well in your classes, you continue to make progress. But if you have questions, certainly feel free to let us know sort of what those things are. And I just wanted to say, just for time, we're at 1:40, Melissa, and so I know we have a few slides left, but we do want to leave some time for questions also.
Okay, great. So now we're going to speak to federal financial aid. And so I won't spend too much time on this slide, but I did want to make you aware that there are 3 options that are offered to you as a union student, 2 of which are federal student loans. So the direct unsub loan, which you may have heard previously, but this is the Stafford loan, as well as the Grad Plus loan, and then last but not least, the federal work study. So I'll just tick through these categories so that you are aware of who's eligible and what does that entail. So in order to utilize federal loans across the board, whether it's the Stafford or the Grad Plus loan, you have to maintain a minimum of 6 credits or more. For the Stafford loan, you have a lifetime limit, a borrowing limit of $138,500 with an annual limit of $20,500. The origination fee for the 2019-2020 award year was a little over 1%, and that's proportionately deducted within each disbursement. So whenever you originate an award or a loan, then it will deduct the 1%. That doesn't mean that it's going to deduct it multiple times within the disbursement, but whenever your loan is originated, it will deduct the 1%. And then after that, the 2019-2020 interest rates were at 6.08%, which was fixed. And unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have the 2020-2021 year academic year interest rates. Those have not yet been announced, but these are the rates that we're working with today. Now, the difference between the unsub and the Grad Plus loan is that for the unsub, for the most part, this is the easiest and the most resourceful way for students to receive funding. And the federal government pretty much says, if you are enrolled as a full-time student, we will make this funding available to you, providing that you have not exceeded the lifetime borrowing limit. Now, the Grad Plus loan allows you to borrow more than the Stafford loan, but this loan is harder to receive because it is dependent on your credit history. So earlier when we talked about getting your finances in order, making sure that you don't have any defaults that are out there, making sure that your credit history and your credit lines are okay, this is where that becomes important, because any blip within your credit borrowing history will will prohibit you from utilizing the Grad Plus loan. So here, there's no annual aggregate limit. The origination fee is higher. It's at 4.25%, and the loan that we prioritize for our students would be the Stafford loan for a couple of reasons, both a lower interest as well as a lower origination fee. But you do have more borrowing bandwidth with the Grad Plus loan. And currently, that interest rate is sitting at about 7.08%. And last but not least, we have the federal work study, which will include both on-campus as well as could include both on-campus and off-campus employment. This is not, unfortunately, available to everyone because it is a supply and demand situation. However, we do try to accommodate as many students as we can, and because it is a federal program based on need, then we look at the greatest need. We look to service the greatest need first within this program. And the federal work study is paid by payroll checks as well as earned taxable income. Next slide, please.
Do you mind? I'm gonna I just want to a few questions, just because we only have about 15 minutes left, and there were a few questions that came in from the chat that just addressed previous slides. So we had several questions about insurance and the health insurance fee. So just the general thrust of it was, about what are the rules around waiving health insurance, and then what does insurance cover, and then a question about what is the health program fee, which is something separate. So just to clarify, those questions are great questions. All students that go to school in the United States, and this is any school, are required to show proof of insurance, whether you're domestic or international. That means for international students, typically you have to use the school's insurance in most cases. But for domestic students, as long as you show proof of insurance, you can, if you're covered by a spouse's insurance, you can waive the insurance requirement because you're insured elsewhere. Also, if you have access as a resident of New York City, for example, to city or state health insurance, you can use that if you have other options. So you either have to submit a waiver for the health insurance or choose insurance through Columbia University. And we will be publishing those rates on the Student Affairs website that typically is approved somewhere between April and June by Columbia University. So we don't actually control those rates, but they're basically published on our website once we have the information. And then just to clarify, the health services fee, as you notice, it is quite high, but it's because we're an affiliate of Columbia, it actually gives union students access to all of the health services clinics and mental health services, disability services available through Columbia University. So for example, right now, when we're in the midst of a national crisis, all union students have access to all of, not even whether you're using Columbia's health insurance or not, students can go to Columbia's health services to receive support as we manage around some of these issues. And so, if you are on campus, you can go to ask to see a doctor or a nurse through Columbia services. There are also other types of services that might be mental health or wellness services that you have access to. So those are what's covered by that fee. Okay, so I'm gonna just let Melissa go forward with the last couple of slides, and then we can talk through the other questions that might address scholarship more broadly, and then also sort of working at union.
Okay. So here are some options for utilizing or researching external scholarships. If you're not interested in fully funding the gap of your cost of attendance with student loans, then these are just some resources that we provide to students. So, and this information will be shared broadly, so you don't have to worry. You can access scholarships.com. as well as FTE Leaders Advancing Scholarships Ministry, as well as FTE Leaders A Search Beyond Fund Finder. Next slide, please. As well as what we're noticing is that a great deal of support that's coming through to our students are coming through their diocese as well as denomination scholarship programs. So here are just a few listing of the major scholarships that we have been seeing. But of course, this by no means prevents you from looking for additional, nor does this include the full picture. So for the American Baptist, the website is provided for you here, as well as Disciples of Christ, the PCUSA, which is the Presbyterian Church, the United Church of Christ, the UCC, the United Methodist Church, which is the UMC, and then the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is the UUA. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and just to mention, this is meant to be a starting list. It's by no means comprehensive. So we, search for denominations that have a lot of information within their own pages, and some of you know about some of these programs already, but this doesn't represent the entire universe of programs that are available to seminary students.
Other scholarship programs include the Davis Putter Scholarship Fund, which is very active in social and economic justice. So for those of you who were attracted to Union based on the history of social justice, this may be of interest to you. The Ruth Burt Fund Scholarship, which supports people motivated by spiritual values, as well as the Point Foundation Scholarship, which supports the LGBTQ student community. Next slide, please. And last but not least, I know that you're probably not looking at or thinking about loan forgiveness programs now as you're looking to start this process, but it's always good to know what is available to you as you move through or you move about your journey. So within the loan forgiveness program, there are two options that we would always like to share. And the first is the Federal Public Service Loan Forgiveness. So essentially, you will have to make 120 monthly payments. So that equates to 10 years of making payments consistently within the program. You will have to be an employee of a qualifying 501c3 nonprofit or public agency. And that would have to be information that you will have to look into prior to seeking eligibility for this program. And you can sign up for it at any point in time. Then you also have the PCUSA, again, which is the Presbyterian Church Debt Assistance Program, which are transformational leadership debt assistance, or provides transformational leadership debt assistance, as well as a season of service loan assistance, which is actually not only after you accrue your debt, it also provides you with loan assistance as well as other assistance throughout your time at Union or as an enrolled full-time student. I believe that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll look to see if there are additional questions as it pertains to what you've just heard.
And we do have questions,
okay.
Some that are queued up through the chat. And then we'll also, if you have, maybe we'll do one or two chat questions since they've been queued up. And then, we can do additional questions. I'm available to stay for 5 minutes after 2 if there are a ton of questions, or we can follow up individually. My appointments, as many of you know, are available on our website. So if you go to the schedule a tour page, you can actually get a link to my Google Calendar to schedule an appointment with me to also address your specific questions. But sort of the next question that we had on the chat was about, was, um, we had a few questions about, sort of external scholarship programs. We'll try to collate them. What if you have a Siegel Education Award from AmeriCorps? Can you use that? Yes, you can use the Siegel program to help pay for costs. I will let you know that Union hasn't formally taken the step of being a Siegel matching school, but we have worked one-on-one with Siegel Award winners to offer a match. So, we basically haven't gone through the application process to be put on their website and everything, but we do try to match students to the extent we have possible. We also are a Yellow Ribbon program, so we match Yellow Ribbon funding. And then external award scholarship programs, there's not necessarily a match there, but students are able to receive some funding from Union and some external scholarship, but then maybe Ms. Melissa can speak very briefly to how that might impact, relate to your total cost of education and your total eligibility for various kinds of funding.
Okay, so when packaging for your financial aid funds, typically the external funding would not have that much of an impact on the need-based grants that you receive. In most cases, the external funds helps to offset the need to borrow student loans, and what would typically be adjusted first would be removing the student loans to minimize your debt or your need to borrow or secure your funding through student loans. So that would be the first. Now, if you are able to receive external funding that meets or exceeds the cost of attendance, in which you would receive a significant refund, that would be something that we would have to address, because that is not typical where we've seen external funding meet or exceed the cost of attendance, where you would not require or need institutional funding to help you to close the gap.
Yeah, and that's a fortunate place to be, and so, but in most students that receive an external scholarship, they're able to have that alongside their fund, and then they can reduce their we had a couple of questions about, working on campus. And I just wanted to clarify, students are able, a lot of students do work part-time. Some, it's an individual choice, so some choose to be completely full-time, but students also will work. You can work up to 20 hours if you take an on-campus job. And we do have both work study and non-work study jobs available. In addition to kind of office assistant positions, which are going to be typical, for example, for work study positions, we have people that work in the library, the communications office, the admissions office, some of our centers. We also have job opportunities that open up after the second year, such as we have students that are tutors or TAs for some of the intro classes that receive a small stipend. We have students that work as student life assistants, so that's similar to an RA position, which awards you housing for that while you're doing that job, so free housing, and then I think in the studio apartment, and a small stipend, and students can apply basically the tail end. They start applying the tail end of their first or their second year for that position. And then there's also an orientation assistant, which is a summer, probably a 6-month assignment, again, for students that have been at Union for longer than a year, and they'll help plan student orientation, and so you receive a stipend as part of that. And I also want to clarify that at Union, we commit to a stipend for all students in our field ed program, so that while you're in your second year, if the organization that you do your year-long field ed program doesn't provide funding because of their size or their budget, Union will cover the cost of your stipend. And so for those positions, it's a minimum of $4,500 for the academic year to cover students. But you can, some students will actually do, because some students are already either working in New York, they have, people at Union are very talented, so they may also have other things that they're doing, whether they're working in a congregation in another capacity. So I would say the average Union student is, they are, managing multiple responsibilities. And most students are trying to find ways to work outside of the classroom at Union. I want to pause, just given that we are almost at time, really at time, but if someone has a question that they haven't put up on the chat, if you want to unmute your phone and maybe ask the questions, we can address any questions that have come up very recently. Okay, we don't have a question, but I did have a question about, this goes back to health insurance. So Laura asked if we're covered by Medicaid, can we continue with that? And yes, if you continue to meet the eligibility for an existing form of insurance while you transition to being a student, you can definitely use your health insurance waiver to continue with that cost of insurance. We don't require students to leave a low-cost form of insurance that grants them what they need to come on the Columbia plan. We just want to make sure that all students are covered. As you're making these decisions, and we certainly hope all of you decide to join us with Union, within our academics services team and the student affairs office that manages the health insurance program, they can help you navigate the sort of the paperwork that you need to submit and how to make these decisions. And also provide, our website will provide some more information about what the insurance will cover. I just want to make sure, I had a question about fitness facilities. Yes, Union students do have access to Columbia's fitness facilities. We also use Columbia's libraries, and a lot of this, we're basically, we will probably cover this in subsequent sessions, but as an affiliate, we're able to take courses, typically up to 3 courses at Columbia, and then also other affiliated universities, and that includes a consortium of seminaries and divinity school within New York, which will help student fulfill various requirements, including denominational requirements. So there's a lot of flexibility in that, even though Union is an independent seminary, we're able to take advantage of being in a city like New York City, where you have access to a variety of institutions to pursue coursework. So we have students that are taking courses at Columbia's Law School, their policy school, at Drew, at New York Seminary, at Fordham, so at a number of schools and seminaries in the area. And I'm getting some thank you, so I know a few of you have to log off. And just because there have been a few questions, I want to reiterate, we both videotape the sessions. We'll be putting this on our YouTube page so that you have access to this, and we will be sending out the slides so that you have access to all of the scholarship resources that we mentioned. And you always also can reach out to us either through admissions@utsnyc.edu, through my office hours and Carmen Smith's office hours and admissions, or through the financial aid alias, which is FINAID@utsnyc.edu. Those are the mechanisms that we use to field admissions and financial aid related questions, and then we forward them to the appropriate person on our team as necessary. But I encourage you to be in dialogue with us, particularly if you know that Union is your top choice. and that you would really like to make it work. We understand that this is a very weighty decision, especially during difficult times. And so we're always willing to engage with you in that conversation to see how we can assist you given the constraints we have around, federal loan programs and how they work, and our institutional programs and how they work as well. But we encourage you to be in touch. And just for the interest of time, I don't want to keep you here too long. I just wanted to thank everyone, including Melissa, for sharing this past hour or so with us. We're really excited to welcome you to Union, and really appreciate your patience and graciousness as we quickly remade our plans. We would hope to meet you all in person in April, but I'm glad that so many of you were able to sign on very short notice to join us today. So thank you very much. We're really excited to have you engage with us, and I hope to actually have a conversation with you and to see many of you in the fall. As you know, we're virtual this semester, but we are definitely looking forward to being back together as a community in person when classes resume in the fall. So we hope that you can be a part of that as well. All right, so I'm going to sign off. And again, if you have any other questions that we didn't answer, feel free to reach out to us. We're here for you.